Is there anything, I mean, now we've got a smaller group today, is there anything specific around Power BI that you're interested in seeing?
For sure. We could do a session specifically for you.
Okay, they're not saying anything. I don't know if they know they're muted. But let's kick off. So yeah, Eric. Oh, there we go. We got no. That's it. Okay, Eric. Benita. Yes.
I was just going to say I'm happy to have an overview because I'm very unfamiliar with it. I've never used it, but I'm very intrigued by it. So
cool. Absolutely. Okay.
Great. So Eric, take us away. Power BI.
Awesome. Okay. Yeah. Thanks everyone for joining us for this last webinar in this series that we've been doing. Obviously, this is the 6th one that we've had over the last few months now. And it's quite an exciting one to end off with, because I think there's always a lot of questions around, well, how do we effectively make business decisions without the right insight into how our business is actually doing? And I think a lot of businesses right now still rely too much, if I can put it that way, on Excel. And that's not to say Excel is not a bad solution, but really Excel can be very admin intensive. And I'm sure all of you have experienced that. So unless you're very well versed or experienced with Excel and you know your formulas and you know how to put something together, it still is very admin intensive. And what Microsoft wanted to do is take away really 2 big burdens when it comes to getting results for the data that we want to work with. And those 2 things are, firstly, that when we look at reports, it should be live. So when we open a report, we should be able to have confidence that when we open that report is the most accurate data at that point in time. Of course, we can then go and say we only want to see May's figures, May 2019 or May 2018, etc. That's fine. But when we open the report, we want to feel confident that, okay, these are the latest figures and we can go ahead. The second thing that customers look for is obviously to take away that admin burden. So the constant monotony of updating an Excel spreadsheet with the latest figures, no matter what type of figures those are, causes, let's say, a lot of frustration within many organizations because they need additional staff to do that. It's sometimes difficult to make sure that people don't carry that kind of data away with them because it's Excel documents shared not necessarily via OneDrive or SharePoint or via other cloud solutions, but in many cases it's Excel documents that are just on a file server that can just be copied, or an Excel document that just gets sent over an email. So those were 2 key questions, and there were obviously many more, but those were 2 key things that Microsoft wanted to address when it came to reporting. And I'll speak to later a specific scenario that really I had when I was at Microsoft. And I really looked at this because when Power BI was launched, it was obviously with much excitement, both to internal Microsoft staff who had a big reliance on internal reporting across the globe, and obviously to customers. And I'll speak to a scenario that I had there, which Power BI really helped to cater for. Okay, so let's get into it. So really Power BI fits within this business application platform. And as I said 2 weeks ago when we were focusing on flow, the business application platform, as a brief overview again, is really about allowing you as a business and as a user within your organization to create something that is unique for your company. And the same thing goes for a solution like Power BI. Now, Power BI is really about business analytics and dashboards. So I'll speak to the difference between reports and dashboards when we actually get into showcasing what Power BI actually is. But Power BI is really about taking your reporting, which currently the majority of it probably gets done over Excel or maybe within some other cloud solutions. But if you want to consolidate that reporting and have a single view of all your data, Power BI is a great business analytics tool that's included as part of Office 365 that you can use to actually achieve that. Now, I know last week we didn't manage to go through Planner because of just the time that we spent on Flow. So I do briefly want to just go through how does Microsoft Planner fit within the task management, project management space for the first 5 to 10 minutes, and then we'll really take a deep dive into Power BI because I know that's probably what you all want to see. Okay. Now, Planner really forms part of these 4 task management or project management solutions that Microsoft has. We all probably know Tasks, that forms part of Outlook. Then something new that Microsoft has released is To Do, which is a mobile app. And for those of you who have used Wunderlist in the past, this is basically a rebranding of Wunderlist. Wunderlist was an application that was always owned and managed by Microsoft, so purchased by Microsoft quite a long time ago and brought into the Microsoft organization. And now it's been rebranded and been brought into the Office 365 environment, renamed as To Do. We then have Planner, which is for everyday project management. Okay, so really handling small scale projects that are really centered around teams or tasks or teams or groups of people, if I put it that way. And it's very similar to another well-known app like Trello, if you've used that before. We then have at the top end Project Online, which is really project portfolio management. So if you want to do everything from asset tracking, resource allocation, project overview dashboard, in-depth reporting into your cost management, etc. All of that kind of stuff is far better suited to something like Project Online. But I think Planner really hits the sweet spot. And in the brief 5 minutes that we go through it now, I think you'll see that Microsoft has really strategically placed Planner within the Office 365 environment with great integration into Microsoft Teams. So you can use it within the Microsoft Teams application. And it allows basically 95%. So most scenarios when it comes to handling tasks amongst your colleagues or your department or your team, or for a small scale project, can be handled through Planner. And you would really only need to look at Project Online if there's a specific project management function that your organization does or needs to manage. Okay. So this is where really work management fits. So there's always been a level of complexity in terms of how do you handle tasks, because the more tasks you want to handle, the more complex your project is. The problem is, in general, the more complex the solution that gets put in front of you and your users. So what's ended up happening is most users tend to prefer using their own individual task management application. Either they manage their apps on their phone, manage their tasks on their phone, or through Outlook, or through some other means on their device. And that makes it easy for them because they've got a simplified dashboard to do that. And Microsoft wanted to keep that simplicity of task management on an individual basis, but allow ad hoc teams of people to actually work together and handle these tasks far more efficiently than all of us handling them individually and then actually having to come and meet together all the time to actually get feedback on how these tasks are going. So work management in ad hoc teams through Microsoft Planner really works well and hits that sweet spot, which Microsoft didn't have a solution for previously. Okay, so it has been around for a while now. I think it's almost coming up on 3 years that Planner has been around. Microsoft has added features ever since, but before 3 years ago, there has never been an app that really fulfilled this kind of spot. It was either individual task management in Outlook or project portfolio management, which meant the jump from the level of complexity was significant. Now, this is what Planner looks like, the Planner dashboard. And so we've got a little hub that will show us our plans that we're a part of and the ones that we've actually focusing on. So like the event plan, and it'll tell us how many tasks are left. The product launch event, how many tasks are left. And then it gives us a little summary. Which tasks haven't been started, which ones are in progress, which ones are late, which ones are completed. And that allows us, if we're the manager of the plan, to get a great view on how individuals within the team are tracking, whether they're starting their tasks, whether they're actually managing to complete them in time, and obviously how far along the project is to being completed, which is the most important thing. And this can be difficult to do without sort of dashboard which you can access from anywhere. So I'll show you that briefly. So let's cut over quickly. And I've got Planner linked directly here. Okay, so the same dashboard that I was speaking about earlier, we've got both the event plan and the product launch event over here. And if we look at the event plan here that has 12 tasks left and we go into it, we get this really great board view, as Microsoft calls it. And this has a lot of similarity to many other task management apps that fulfill a similar kind of requirement. So things like Trello will do a similar approach to these boards. And what these boards allow you to do is organize tasks that are assigned to different people based on their specific type. So these tasks might be related to the presentation for the event. These tasks are related to any press releases or press involvement at the event, etc. These ones are tasks that are related to the venue. So it's a great way to categorize and organize your tasks instead of having an entire list that that you can't actually see, okay, which tasks are assigned to which categories, or which tasks are assigned to which specific people. So this task view gives you a great overview of what's happening. We can also see very easily who these tasks are assigned to. So Alex, Grady, Adele, etc. And if we want to organize these tasks in a different way, we can group them. So the ability to group by bucket, which is currently being shown here, and we can rename these buckets by just clicking on them. It's got a very interactive interface. And to add a new task to any bucket, we can just add the plus and we type in those details. So if we want to group by who they're assigned to, you can very easily see, okay, who are they assigned to? Well, there are Adele's tasks, Alex's tasks, Grady, etc. Or I could group them by the progress. Haven't been started, in progress, completed, or I can go look at the due date to see which ones are late, which ones are due today.
Interrupt you there, Eric. We just got Joe. He says, is the screen meant to be moving? It's probably not moving for him. Can you just stop sharing and reshare?
Yeah, sure. It's hopefully it comes back up for you, Joe. I'll bring it.
Joe, yeah, just let us know in the chat. Great. He says it's okay now.
Great, thanks. Okay, so the ability to just have an overview of these tasks and filter them based on how I want to see them is a great way as a manager of this plan or this project to get a sense of what's happening. I also get, if I want to add tasks to any individual person, so I've got a new task, let's say, with regards to the presentation. Microsoft also wanted to simplify the adding of tasks, because in many cases, when we're adding a task to a project in a project management solution like Project Online, there's a lot of complexity, as in, what kind of requirements are actually structured against it. Whereas there should only be 3 things that really we need to think about off the get-go. And that is, what is the task name, which is what is the task about, what needs to be done, when is its due date, and who is it assigned to? And those are 3 core requirements to actually handling a task. And if I can add those 3, I could go into it afterwards and add additional details. But let's say I want to add required, say, marketing pictures, set the due date, and we just set it for next week Friday, and we can just assign it to Christy, who's part of it. And we just say add task. What that means is now Christy will get a notification and that task will appear in her Outlook calendar. It was one of the most requested things from individuals is, okay, all of us are very good at managing our calendar items. We know when we have specific calendar appointments. But in many cases, if we look at our Outlook tasks list, that can be very, let's say, I'm trying to think of the word now. Yeah, your Outlook tasks can be quite cluttered with a lot of different other things, obviously flagged emails, etc. So having it as a due calendar appointment in your calendar in Outlook is a great way to get reminded about it, and it's a great way to actually manage your time around this plan or this task. And then if I wanted to add more details for Christy or add additional people, I can add additional people that need to be involved here, and I can actually adjust the due date, add a description so that Christy has maybe more background information about this, a checklist that she maybe needs to complete, and any attachments, so documents or links or anything from SharePoint that can be added. Okay, and all of this visibility that I'm showing you here in terms of Planner, the exact same look and feel applies here in Teams. So if we look here in Teams and we go and have a look at, I think we have it here, sorry, opportunities. If we go and look here under the opportunities, under business development, we've got here tasks. So we have that same Planner board, but you can see how it's now pinned directly around, well, here are the business development opportunities and the tasks around those opportunities. So again, in context, like I'd spoken to in the team session, you've got these tasks in context of the conversations and files that are going on in the organization with regards to the business development opportunities. Okay, so, and I can still do all that grouping, adding the task is exactly the same, etc. Okay. Now, finally, just the last one or two things I want to go through. We can have a look at this as a chart. So if we're a manager and want to see how these are assigned, so we can go and have a look at who these are assigned to. So maybe we can look at, oh, Adele maybe has too many tasks here. She's got 4, but Diego, Emily, and Enrico has none. Maybe we can reassign some of these tasks to stabilize or give Adele maybe a bit more flexibility in terms of her resource and where she's assigned in terms of tasks. We can free up her calendar a bit by reassigning tasks to somebody else. And then the schedule view gives us the ability to see this on a week or a month. So during this week, we can see here we're on the 27th at the moment with the blue line on top of it. We've got currently these tasks that are ongoing, and this web media kit was actually started on Monday. And we can click on any task and actually go and see, based on the comments, how things are tracking. Okay, so that's a bit of a view on Planner. But let's spend now the rest of the time focusing on Power BI itself. Just want to head back briefly to presentation. Okay. So Power BI is really about visually exploring your data. A lot of times in Excel, we have rows and columns of results, and we've got to try and make sense of that. Now, as human beings, it's difficult to gain insight into how things are tracking by having a look at rows and columns. We need a sense of this visually so we can see a trend, a chart that's actually going up or going down, etc. And this is really what Power BI is built on, providing quick analytics into your data so that you can go from there and be informed. You also need to have access to your data anywhere, anytime. So just like SharePoint and OneDrive and Planner gives you the ability to have your tasks and your documents and your files accessible anywhere, Power BI gives you access to your reports anywhere. Okay, and that was also sometimes a challenge. when it came to Excel reports, having mobile access to those Excel reports. Those of you who've opened an Excel document on your mobile phone will know what I mean there. And then the last one here is really to keep your data fresh by connecting it via a gateway. Now, a gateway allows a lot of us store our data at our offices, but we want to make sure that this cloud solution, Power BI, always has access to the latest information that's at our offices. And so we can create a secure gateway, which is like it's a secure connection between your office and just Power BI, and it encrypts all the data in transit to Power BI, and it encrypts all the data that is actually stored in Power BI. So everything is secure for you end to end. But this gateway then allows Power BI to keep your data fresh and keep it live for everyone that looks at the report. Okay, so let's dive into the application. Now, Power BI is an online service, but just like many of the online services in Office 365, they have a corresponding desktop app. So as an example, you've got Word Online in Office 365, where you can use Word in your browser. So here we go, we've got Word, and we've got Outlook Online, and we've got OneDrive Online. But I think you'd all agree with me that you have Outlook also installed on your desktop. You also have a OneDrive application that runs on your PC that synchronizes your files to your PC. And at the same time, you also have a Word desktop application that is installed that allows you to work on word processing or creating Word documents on your desktop. Okay, so most of these applications that are cloud enabled have a corresponding desktop app. And the same thing goes for Power BI. Okay, so you can work on these reports in an offline capacity, just like you can work with your documents in Word without being connected to the internet. Okay, now obviously if you're trying to open a OneDrive document and it's in the cloud, obviously you need an internet connection. Same thing, if you're trying to open or access data that's stored in the cloud in Power BI, you would need data as well, or you'd need an internet connection as well. Okay, so it's trying to create a familiarity between that. What you'll also see here with the Power BI desktop app is that the familiar ribbon, the Microsoft Office ribbon, also appears here. So your most frequently used actions here in Power BI are here at the top under Home. You've got the View tab, the Modeling tab, and the Help tab, which I'll go through briefly as we progress through the session. Now, importantly, you probably want to know, how do I get the Power BI desktop app? Well, the easiest way to do that is just to search in Google. You just do a search. I can give you the exact link, but you can just search for download Power BI. Okay, and if you search for that, it'll take you straight. The first result should be immediately the Power BI downloads, and you can download it without having to sign in or sign up for Office 365 or anything like that. So even those of you who do not have Office 365 at all, haven't moved your organization onto Office 365 whatsoever, you can still use Power BI to create reports in the same way as I'm going to show you. What you'll miss though is being able to publish the reports. So being able to publish them to the cloud and store them in the cloud so that anybody using the cloud, or Office 365 in this case, can actually access those. Once you want to publish the report, you will need the corresponding Office 365 license. Okay, so this is the easy way to just download the desktop app, which anybody, regardless whether they have Office 365 or not, can go and download the app, create amazing reports quickly. Okay. Now, to create some more familiarity with the app, we have this the ribbon. On the right-hand side, we have our visuals. So this is the kind of charts we want to add. So if we want to add a pie chart, we can just click on the pie chart and we kind of move it around wherever we want it on our canvas. If we want to add a line chart, we can go and add this line chart wherever we want. Make it bigger or smaller, put it wherever we need it. Underneath it, we've got the filters and the draw through. So these are, you'll get a sense of what these are, but the filters allow you to, just like in Excel, you want to filter certain columns to only show you maybe data from for 2019, instead of maybe including 2018 or earlier, you can go and do a page filter, which will filter all the charts on this page by a specific year. Or if you want to do rather a report level filter, which will then filter every single page in your report. So maybe you have multiple pages of different visuals, one visual showing your sales figures, one showing the sales trend, another one showing your sales people's performance. All of those kind of tabs giving you specific elements of your sales metrics will then be filtered by this report level filter. So you can decide which level you want to filter the reports at. And then the draw through is, well, if I select a filter here and I say I only want to see Eric's sales, and I select that here, Eric, well then no matter which page I go to in the report, it's only going to show Eric. So I can turn on cross-report filter or draw through. Those kinds of things enable that here. But obviously, if you want to get started with Power BI after the session, you're more than welcome to reach out, and yeah, we can assist with that. Okay, then on the right-hand side here, we've got the fields. Now the fields are basically like the columns, and you'll see what will happen now when we add some data into Power BI, what these fields will actually show up as. Okay, so let's do that. I've given you a sense of the app, but let's do a report quickly. So I'm going to show you how you can go from 0 to hero, if I can put it that way, in roughly 10 minutes. Okay, so we can have a pre-built report that connects to live data, and we'll have it done within 10 minutes if we went through it quickly. Obviously, I might pause at certain stages to explain things in a bit more detail.
Eric,
okay,
if I may just come in over here, I think what's important that I just want to emphasize to everyone is that the sources. Maybe you can talk a little bit about where does the data come from, and does it only come from Excel, or can it talk to SQL, or what type of what does the data need? Where does this data actually come from, and what is the capabilities of the system? How do we know if your data is compatible in inverted commas?
Agreed. Great question. Let me get to that. I just want to get a data source that we're going to connect to, and I'll speak about the sources shortly. Okay. So there's an extensive list, if anybody's wondering, and I'll show you that list shortly. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to use an example of a website. A lot of us know there's a lot of data on websites, and the websites update on a continuous basis. Now, a great way to go and look at this is I've already got as an example, we all know IMDb, right? Now we know there's an IMDb, let's say TV shows. Okay, now IMDb has a list of TV shows. Now this could be any website. I've used this on like tennis rankings, or let's say football rankings, or anything like that. You could use it on anything like that in terms of a personal kind of thing, or if it's business related, this could be like shares. You have a site that actually has all of the shares that you're following, and you could connect Power BI to that so that it always updates the share price on a visual dashboard for you. I'm going to use IMDb for this example just because it's easy to showcase the strength of Power BI to go from nothing to something that's really intelligent and visual for us quite quickly. The other ones might require a little bit more work in terms of doing that. Okay, so right now we've got this website which shows us the top 250 TV shows of all time across the world, as rated by users across the world. And I can take this website and I can just copy the website address. And if I go to Power BI and I click on Get Data, this is where we will see a view of all the data sources. So we can connect it to existing Excel workbooks where we can import data from Excel, because that's where it might be sitting. We can connect it, we can pull in data from a PDF. A lot of our reports, or a lot of reports that I've worked with or seen, have tables inside a PDF, but you might want to extract the data out of that PDF, and so that you can actually work with that. So it can extract the table out of the PDF document and work with that data and those numbers in Power BI. Okay, we can connect to a SQL database, can connect to SharePoint if you want to visualize or work with files in SharePoint. And you can see there's various other databases, and these cover the most used databases across the world. So we talk about Oracle, we talk about IBM, MySQL from an open source database platform, PostgreSQL, Sybase, Teradata, SAP, Amazon Redshift, Google BigQuery. So you can see here, this is not Microsoft specific. The data sources here are extensive, as I said before. Okay, so we can even connect to things like, if we have a look here at the list, where is it here? So things like Stripe, if you're getting credit card information from there, QuickBooks, if you're using QuickBooks as an accounting package, or Xero, if you're using Xero as your accounting or platform, you can also use that. We've got GitHub here, Facebook, Google Analytics, Salesforce, etc. Okay, so if you're considering how am I going to connect Power BI to my data, the question, that question shouldn't really worry you, because most of the time you will be able to connect to whatever data the application is actually storing behind the scenes. And a lot of the applications that we use on a day-to-day basis, most of the time stored on some sort of SQL database. Either it's a Microsoft SQL, so if you use like ACPAC, a lot of companies use ACPAC as well, that I found is a SQL backend, or some open source applications use MySQL. You know, so there's a lot of the times you'll actually find that SQL and MySQL are predominantly the database systems you're going to use. But in this case, we're going to connect to a website. So we can say other, we want to connect to web, and all that Power BI is going to want is a URL. Okay, so we can just paste the URL in here, and Power BI is going to go and scan this. Now, to tell you briefly, when Power BI was launched, something that I was really interested in, a lot of the reporting I was doing for Microsoft was centered around analytics on how Office 365 was being adopted. And it was all done in Excel. You can imagine the millions of rows that Excel needed to compute in terms of doing this and generating the accurate results for me. But Power BI, because all of the number crunching is actually done in Microsoft's data center, it's not done on the device. And that's one of the key differences between Excel and Power BI, is that the number crunching and the performance is actually done in the cloud versus on your device. That makes it a lot quicker. So I went ahead and I moved all of my Excel reports to Power BI, and I can tell you I managed to save what took me 8 hours to put the reports together, because there were a number of different reports and I need to update every single one with the new results. It took me about 8 hours to do all of the reports on a monthly basis if I added all the time together. That went to zero. I never had to look at those reports ever again, because all I did was Power BI connected directly to the data, and whenever my manager wanted to look at it, whether she wanted to look at it at the end of the month, whether she wanted to look at it in the middle of the month, it didn't matter. She always got the accurate results, exactly how everything was tracking whenever she wanted to look at it. And so that meant I could use those 8 hours to do other things that aligned my focus with obviously the objectives of making sure that the adoption was where we wanted it as Microsoft. So if we look at what the navigators found on this website, it's connected to this website, it's scanned the website, and it's found a couple of tables, 3 tables specifically. And we can scan through the tables and we can see that table 0 is actually the one we want. So we've got this data here. Okay, which is great. So I can go here, I'm going to select table 0 and I'm going to say edit. Now you're always going to want to say edit, regardless of whether it's an Excel document you're connecting in here, or a website or any other form of data. You want to click edit. And the reason is you want to make sure that Power BI has detected the right formatting for the columns. Now, most of the time Power BI does this correctly, but sometimes it might not. And that might be because of regional settings, like here for the IMDb rating, we've got 9.5, right, as a decimal number. But from a regional settings perspective in South Africa, it's not going to detect 9.5 as a decimal number, okay? Because it's in terms of South Africa, it's going to want to have a comma. If it sees 9.5, then it's going to see it's a decimal number. It's just the standard in South Africa is to have commas between decimal numbers. It's just how it is. So I'm sure you've seen that many times in Excel where it doesn't actually want to format decimal numbers. But I'll show you how much easier it is in Power BI. Okay, so all I did on that previous step is I removed the columns that I didn't want. So I've got the rank, title, and the year in this column, and the rating in this column. Now, the first thing I want to do is split this column out because I've got rank, then the title, and then the year. So let's first do that, and you'll see how easy this is instead of splitting columns in Excel. So if I right-click on this column and I say split column by delimiter, I can then split it by full stop. And I say at the leftmost, and I say OK. Okay, so that's split. So I'm going to say rank. Just double click on the column name and I say rank. And can you see it's automatically formatted it correctly? It detected, it's a number. Perfect. Okay, so that did it correctly. The next one, I'm going to split this again, also by delimiter. But in this case, it's automatically found, okay? Open bracket, open bracket. And I only want to split it at the leftmost, so I'm going to say OK. And there we go, we have the title. Okay, and it's kept it as text, which is great. So this formatting here. Then we have the year, but we need to remove this close bracket. And super easy to remove the close bracket. We can just replace values, and we just replace the close bracket with nothing. We just say OK, gone. Now this could be, we've only got 250 rows here going down, but this could be, let's say millions, hundreds of millions of rows down, and it would just do it like that. Okay, so now we've got the columns in the way that we wanted, except for this last one here. So what I'm going to do is, let's first change this. So we're going to replace values again. We're going to replace full stops in this case with commas. We'll say OK, and now it's done that. Okay, now before I continue, what I want to do is create another column. Similar to how I create a column in Excel, I want to create a column that does a calculation for me. So I want to calculate which decade each of these movies falls into, so that I can figure out what is the most popular decade, or what is the most, let's say the decade that has the highest rated TV shows. So let's go and do that. I'm going to go to the top over here and I'm going to say add column. And I'm going to say a custom column, okay, because I want to choose what this column is going to be. I'm going to give this column a name. I'm going to call it here decade. And I'm going to say, I'm going to use a formula here. Okay, now you could use existing Excel formulas. So if you know Excel formulas, you can use those here. You can use SQL queries. If you want to use SQL queries here, you can do that. Or you can use a open source analytics language called DAX. Now, DAX is not a Microsoft specific analytics language. If you learn DAX, it's pretty much universal. So it doesn't matter whether you then start building reports on Power BI or whether you start building it on any other solution such as Tableau, which is now being bought by Salesforce, or whether you start building it on a solution like Qlik or QlikView. Okay, those competitive solutions out there, you can also use DAX. So I'm going to say I want to get text from the start, and what I enjoy about DAX, maybe just to speak about DAX briefly, is it flows with natural language. A lot of the formulas in Excel don't necessarily flow with natural language. It's very much, you know, if, or let's say some, you got to at least know the syntax. Whereas here I could use it in a more naturally spoken method. So I want to get text from the start, text.start. I want to get text from the end, text.end. I want to get text from the middle, text.mid. Okay, it makes sense in terms of the language. So I want to get text from the start of the year. So I just include the year as a column. And then you can see it's given me, I need to put a comma, so comma, and the number. So I'm going to put, I want 3. I want 3 characters from the start of the year. And to get the decade, all I'm going to add is 0s on the end. Okay, so I'm going to text from .start 3 characters, and then I'm going to add 0s in the end. I'm just going to click OK. And there we go. 2010s, 2000s, etc. It's built all of those down, all the way down to the end. Okay, so we've got the decade now for everything, which is fantastic. And the very last step now, before we go through it, is we select all the columns and we just tell Power BI to detect the data type. So we don't have to go through format column, all that kind of stuff. We just say detect data type. Everything is detected. Number, text, number, decimal number, text. And if there were dates in the column, it would format them as dates. Okay. Now, before I close and apply this, what I want to speak to is, what if you need to undo? So you may notice there's no undo buttons here. There's nothing whatsoever. So if I want to undo any of the changes that I made, or any things that I changed here, I don't see any way to undo. That might be strange initially, but what Microsoft has done is given you something even more powerful. They've given you a steps, an applied steps view, where you can go back and see exactly what the data looked like at source. So that's actually what it looked like on the website in terms of HTML, and it found those tables. Then it structured the navigation accordingly so that us as human beings could understand it in Power BI. It then changed the type for some of the columns. We then removed some columns, we then split some columns, etc., etc. And we can go through all these steps and even modify these steps by using the little cog next to each step. We can then go and modify whatever the calculation that we used, which is a great way to then go and do that. Okay. So I'm going to rename this table. I'm going to call this TV shows, and I'm going to close and apply it. Now, what it's going to do is it's going to those. I think we had about 12 to 15 steps in Power BI. What it does is it goes and connects to the TV shows, and live all the time, it will, whenever there's a change on IMDb, it goes and applies each one of those steps to get us to the data where we have it at the end. So if we look at it, let's say in 2 months' time, and Power BI still needs to connect to IMDb, well, it's still connecting to the same page, applies those steps for us, and our report looks exactly the same. So that's how it continues to work, because we're doing those manipulations on the data in that method, using those steps. Okay, so now we have our table called TV shows, and we've got the decade, the rating, the rank, etc. And now it's just a drag and drop. So if I want to see all the titles by rank, or let's say rating rather, I want to see all the by rating, and I by mistake built a hierarchy there. I can go and do that, and I can see here alphabetically with the rating next to the TV show. If I want to sort it by, let's say, instead of the title, I want to sort it by the rating, I just click on the rating column, and it does that. Now, because the TV shows, these ones have, let's say, a UK and a US, or different regional, there might be Dragon Ball Z, I think, has like, let's say, I think there's Japanese and then a US. So it's added the two together. We don't want to do that. So what we can do is on the rating, we can say currently it's summing. We can say don't summarize, which is then going to make sure that the data is actually, let's put it the right way around. So there we go. We've got Chernobyl, Planet Earth 2 as the top TV shows. And we see Game of Thrones, which used to be #1 for a long time, it's now dropped down to #6. Okay, so so that gives us our ratings. But this is not really visual. This is just a chart. I mean, this gives us similar to like an Excel view. Let's go and do a chart. Maybe I want to see which decade is the most popular. So I went and clicked on the pie chart there. I'm going to move it around and put it in this corner. And I want to see the decade. I'm going to drag and drop the decade onto it by title. Okay, now I have to move the title down to the values, because what I want to see is a count of the number of titles per decade. And you'll see what happens as soon as I drop title into values. So what values this chart is going to show, it immediately says, oh, you probably want to count them. Okay, so immediately it changed it to count for me, and you can see it's immediately counted. And it's already done the calculations for me on the charts to show me which ones. So I can see that the current decade, almost, well, 46%, 115 shows actually appear in the top 250 chart is from the current decade. Whereas if we look at the 1950s, there's only 2 TV shows. But maybe we want to see which 2 TV shows. So if I click on the 1950s, it automatically filters everything else on the report accordingly. So there it's still sorted by highest to lowest, the Twilight Zone, Alfred Hitchcock. But now we're only seeing the 1950s. If we only want to see the 80s, we can click on the 80s, only show us the 80s. If we want to see the 2000s, shows us 2000s. This will filter whatever's here automatically for us, which is great. Okay, so it's very interactive as well. Get a sense of that. Okay, but this chart doesn't necessarily give us an idea of what is the best decade to watch TV in. I mean, if we watched all 115 TV shows in the current decade, I mean, we're going to get some TV shows that are down here right at the bottom, which are probably quite good as well, but they might not be as good as some of the other shows that are here. So we want to see maybe the decade with the highest average rating. So let's look at a line chart now, because I want to plot what is the decade. We're going to drag and drop the decade on again, but this time we want to see the rating. I want to see the average rating as the values. Okay, now by default, you can see here it's just done this chart, and what it's decided is decided to sum. But I can decide for these values, I want to rather see a average. Okay, so what's the average rating? Okay, and then I can then sort it. How do I sort it? Let's say from 1950s to 2010s on that side. What I can do is I can click on these 3 dots, sort this visual by the decade instead of by the rating. So let's sort it by the decade. We just have to sort it again, sort it ascending instead. So now it goes from 1950s to 2010s. And we can see here that the 1950s is the highest up on there. And I think if we look at it, the 1950s, the Twilight Zone and Alfred Hitchcock, the fact that there's still 2 TV shows that exist on the top 250 TV shows list on IMDb is testament to that. Okay, so the fact that they're still on there is quite amazing. We then got the 2000s being also quite highly ranked as well. So if we look at the 2000s, Rome being the top show, then Archer, Battlestar Galactica, etc. Okay. Oh, sorry, I was reading wrong. Band of Brothers, Breaking Bad, Planet Earth, The Wire. So those are the shows. Okay, now the same thing can be done for any of your other reports. But the idea I wanted to do here for you today is just show you how quickly you can do a report like this. Now, something new that I just want to add before I do that is we can actually add a question here. So I can ask a question about the data. So I can say, I want to see the top, or the, let's say the highest IMDb rating by year. And it builds a chart for us. So depending on your data, we could actually make this really intelligent. So I could, yeah, I mean, let's say titles per decade would maybe be a little bit more And there's the titles per decade. Now it's obviously shown like this, but I can decide to change it to whatever chart I'd prefer to visualize it in. Okay, so there we go. Now, after I've done this report, you probably want to share it. And now to share it with other people, you would need to publish it. And that's when you can publish it into SharePoint. So now we spoke about a SharePoint, and we have SharePoint sites where you want to publish it to Teams, or you might want to publish it, let's say, to just a Power BI service online, and then share the link so people can actually go in an email and just click on the link and view the report. This is what publishing allows you to do. So similar to how in Excel or Word, you have the share button, or when you right click on documents in OneDrive or SharePoint, you can right click on it and then share. Same thing you can do with Power BI, but it's called Publisher. So it's not you're sharing it, you're publishing it online, which then gives you the ability to share after that. You can decide how you want to share that after you publish it. Okay, so I know that was a bit of a quick intro into Power BI. There's obviously a lot more. We could probably spend, honestly, a lot of the training that that I do is centered around like whole day courses or half day courses on Power BI. Generally half day courses, because otherwise I think it's just information overload. But half day courses on Power BI, if you're interested in learning, then yeah, you can spend 4 hours. We're happy to spend 4 hours, and we can do a session like that. Or if you want maybe some assistance in terms of building reports, that could also be done. So yeah, reach out to us, and if there are any questions now, I'd be happy to answer those questions for you based on what I've shown today.
Great, thanks very much, Eric. Very, very interesting. I actually never even knew you could bring it in from a website, so that's very cool. Does anyone have any questions? Okay, it doesn't really look like it. Eric, thank you very much. It's been a really, really awesome 7 or 6 weeks, or it was 12 weeks with 6 different sessions. Thank you very much for putting it together. And yeah, I'm sure this won't be the last. So thanks very much.
For sure. Thanks so much, Daniel. And thanks everyone for being part of this this journey as we really got to know Office 365 a bit better.
Awesome. Thanks.
Awesome.
Cheers.
Cheers.